Welcome. So I'm creating this YouTube video today because one of the most common questions that I'm asked, not every day, but let's say a few times a week, is what are the colors that are in those palettes that you do your watercolor for relaxation painting with? And the first thing that I want to share with you is that watercolor for relaxation painting is definitely not paint specific, meaning you can do this type of painting with any palette that you have. I mean, I don't know if it would be very relaxing to use paint, let's say, that you got at a grocery store, maybe like a Crayola level paint, although maybe you could. I could try that. That would actually be a really interesting YouTube video. If I was like, let me see if I can use the $2 paint from the grocery store to do this kind of painting. But even though I'm always telling people, you can use whatever paints you have, people always want to know what is in my palette. So this is going to be the video where I share with you today exactly what is in that palette. So not every single spread that I ever paint is painted with this palette. I actually have many, many watercolor palettes. I'm going to bring one on just so I can prove to you that I paint with many different palettes, but here's another palette that I use. And oh my gosh, I mean, this is just so many different paint colors. And this is not my primary painting palette. I sometimes paint with this. I enjoy painting with this, but more often than not, most of my paintings are done with just the colors that you see right here. And there were fewer colors on this palette for most of what you see in my journals. And only in the last couple of months have I added some more colors. So like this color I added black after I took a watercolor course with Karen Elaine. And I was like, oh, black is really interesting in a watercolor palette. I never knew about that. So I'm going to take you through all of these different colors. I'll swatch them out. I'll sort of tell you the history behind why I chose these colors. I'll talk about why my palette is so messy. And in order to do that, I've decided that today I'm actually not going to paint in one of my watercolor for relaxation journals because I was gifted something by a company called Etchr, E-T-C-H-R. And Etchr gifted me some of their watercolor sketchbooks. And normally, when I get email solicitations from companies asking if I would like to try out their products, I typically say no. But I made an exception here. And this is not what this video is about, but I just wanted to talk about why I made this exception. So there are not a lot of commercially made watercolor sketchbooks that have really high quality paper. I have found that's why I make my own sketchbooks. What you saw in the video, as I was showing you before, are all my handmade sketchbooks that I make. And I have a course on how to do that called the Willa Journals course. And I'll link to that course below. But when I found out that Etchr had watercolor sketchbooks that had a decal edge, which I love, and that had high quality watercolor paper, I thought I need to give this a try. So not only am I going to be talking about the various paint colors that I use, I'm also going to be giving a try to a brand new sketchbook. And so I have to decide, well, am I going to do this on the first page of a brand new sketchbook? Probably not. Would I do it on the second page? I don't know. I'm going to open this up to like the third page. and I am going to do some swatching as I talk to you about all these different colors and how they made it into my everyday palettes. Okay, I just had to check to see that you could see everything. It's all within view. And let's start first with my Renaissance colors. So I am very partial to a brand of watercolor paints called Renaissance. Renaissance paints are artist quality, artist grade, and they are made in Poland. And funny story about me is that I have Ashkenazi Jewish heritage, and my ancestors lived in Warsaw and Poland and all over actually Eastern Europe. And I found out pretty recently that my ancestors who lived in Eastern Europe and Poland, specifically in Warsaw, that they were artists. They were actually artists, and they were successful artists. And that was the reason why many of them did not leave Europe during the 1930s. And they stayed because they actually found that they were successful and they didn't want to leave their success behind. Anyway, that's just an interesting story. They did not survive World War II, sadly. And I don't even know what their names are. But I found out that I have a lot of art in my genes. So, okay, do I have all the colors here? No, I don't even have all the colors here yet. I'm missing, here it is. I'm missing this color. All right, so I'm going to put these in order of how they are in my palette. And then I'm going to talk to you about how it all came to be. Let's see. Let's get this. Let's get... Oh, I've got to grab something from somewhere else. Here we go here. And we have a black. I don't think I have I do not think I have a tube of black available. But I believe that black is like possibly a lamp black. But I wouldn't worry about the black. Okay. Because that's not something that I've been painting with for very long, nor do I use it very frequently. So here is what I've been using. I'm gonna move all this to the side in case I want to show you again what some of these are. But like I said, this is Renaissance paints, and I fell in love with them many, many years ago when I returned to watercolor painting, and I've never stopped loving Renaissance paints. They are highly pigmented and very, very affordable, and they are distributed in North America by a woman named April, who has a company called A Little Creative Me, or just A Little Creative. And I'll link obviously to her website below. She distributes this paint because she really believes in this company, and because of her, I believe in this company too. And it's pretty amazing what they create and how affordable it is. And that's a major, major reason why I love it. So, all right, I'm going to be swatching these colors out, talking about why I love them. And I think I'm going to use a Yasutomo Fusion brush number 4 round. I can always switch to something else if I want to, but I'm not going to go in the order of the palette. I'm actually going to go in the order of how the palette came to be. So my palette began many, many years ago now when my friend April sent me a set of 3 colors by Renaissance. And at this point, I was already a Renaissance user. So I had already fallen in love with Renaissance paints. And she said that she had an idea. And her idea was that she was going to start packaging up these trios of colors. And they would be trios of different primaries. And they would be like what would be considered mixing sets. So it would be a red, a blue, and a green. And of course, if you've been painting for a while, you know that when someone says red, as far as like a mixing set goes, they don't really mean red. They really mean pink, because it's actually magenta that's the mixing color, not a true red. Red is actually made from a mix of magenta and yellow. So she sent me these 3 colors, and this was going to be her first trial run of a mixing set. So she started with purple magenta, transparent yellow, and phthalo blue. I believe it was phthalo blue. Don't quote me. It could have been this Helio Turquoise, but you know what? I'm thinking it was the phthalo blue. So she sends me these 3 colors and she says, try this out. And I start painting with these 3 colors. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these are incredible. I absolutely love mixing all of my colors just from these 3 colors. This is fantastic. I have fallen in love with this trio. And after painting with it for a while, I think I got in touch with her again, or she got in touch with me again. And she was like, or I was like, I don't really remember, but one of us was like, hey, are you going to do any more trios? It's kind of weird. I have fallen in love so much with the trio you sent me. I'm not really sure I can even fall in love with another trio again. I'm kind of hooked on this. And I don't remember ever moving on from this basic trio. So I think probably a lot of the reason why I love this trio so much is because it turns out that Renesans transparent yellow is just a phenomenal mixing yellow. And the purple magenta is a phenomenal mixing, quote unquote, red. So it's like, oh my gosh, why would I want anything else? So the other color that is in this palette is their Renesans Phthalo Blue. And let's see what that looks like. Now, phthalo blue is not a color that you will see just showing up in my paintings. It's just not, I don't know why I'm getting all these splatters, but phthalo blue is just not a color. It's like a Superman blue. It's just not a color that I gravitate toward. I know that a lot of people like really love blue, just like a primary blue, but primary blues are not really my jam. But as a mixing blue, it's really wonderful. And I'll start mixing colors in a minute after I go through my whole palette. But so this was how my palette started. And because I mentioned here that phthalo blue is just not my jam, I think the next color that I added to the palette was actually this Helio Turquoise. So if you know me and my work, and you might be watching this and you might not know my work, but I have a specific color palette that I really love a lot, and it involves a lot of blue greens. And so I said to April, I need a blue green. I don't think that this cool green is really so much my jam. I'm more of a turquoisey green person. And she sent me this, and of course I fell in love with it right away. This is absolutely my jam. I like pinks and greens. I grew up in a pink and green bedroom in the 1970s, and I've just never ever moved away from my fascination with the color combination pink and green. So then my trio became a quartet, I guess is what you might call it. So I started just using these 4 colors. And of course, I mix a ton of colors with these 4 colors. You can mix literally thousands, if not millions of colors just with these 4 colors. And I do mix these 2 blues and get interesting results. So after that, I was like, hey, I wonder if I could have some other interesting colors in this palette. So the first of the 2 colors that we added is this golden green. Now, golden green is my favorite color. Of all the colors, anywhere, anytime, a yellow green is my favorite. So I thought, just for convenience sake, so that I'm not always having to mix a yellow green, although I do like to mix a yellow green because I do like to sort of control what that yellow green looks like. But I thought, let me have just a convenience yellow green in my palette. And this is absolutely, to me, a gorgeous, gorgeous green. It's not the only green that I love, but it's definitely one of them. I actually prefer something that's a little more yellow. So I love a chartreuse green, which is truly the way to make chartreuse green is take your yellow and add a touch of black to it. But you can also just take this green and add more yellow to it and get a whole variety of yellow greens, which that really floats my boat. So that is why this color got added to my palette. And some of this stuff is just like, it's just personal preference. I don't think that there's necessarily magic. It's just, what do you like? So the next color that we added is this transparent gold ochre. And I like this color as a mixing color, believe it or not. And it's more of like an earth tone, an earthy color. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, I would really love a yellow ochre in my palette. I have fallen in love with yellow ochre lately, like hard. So interestingly, given that this is my palette, maybe I end up replacing this color with yellow ochre. But anyway, this is also just, it adds that earthy element to my palette. I can mix this actually with anything, and it's wonderful. And you're going to see this as I continue on in this video, that it just is wonderful. Okay, then the other two colors that I've always painted with for years and years now are what I call my fashion colors. The first being opera pink, and the second being this is almost like a gouache. It's made by Kuretake Zig. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a Japanese brand. And what I do is I wet this and then I pour it into my palette just for convenience, but you don't need to do that. And then I found out that Yasutomo actually carries these gigantic little bowls of my favorite turquoise. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to have that, because I've been buying these in bulk in like sets of 6 on jet pens, but why not just get big ones from Yasutomo? Again, these are made by this Japanese watercolor manufacturer called, I know what it is. It's Gansai Tambay is what they're called. But Kuretake is maybe the brand, but the type of watercolor is different than European or American watercolor. It's a different type of watercolor. But because I love this color so much, I can't be without it. So I would say, as far as opera pink goes, there's really probably no opera pink that I wouldn't love. So I needed that. Like, Renaissance does not have an opera pink in their line of paints because opera pink is not a light fast color, and Renaissance they've made a decision. They're not selling colors that are not light fast. Because I paint in journals and my work does not typically ever hang on a wall, I am not at all concerned about light fastness. I'm more concerned about my pleasure in painting and enjoying the feeling of my brush on the paper and how that feels to me, and just doing a lot of painting. So why not pick the colors that I love? So that's how opera pink will always be in my palette. So just a little point of note here. This paper is really nice. Really, really nice. So thumbs up so far on my Etcher Perfect Sketchbook Signature Series. Okay, the next color is that Gansai Tambay color that I said you can get on jet pens, you can get straight from Yasutomo. So I'll just pull some from this palette. And it just makes me happy. That's truly why these colors are there. And they make very interesting, unusual mixes. And then I also like to use them in their pure, like straight out of the quote unquote tube version, because you're never going to create something like this from mixing colors. I don't think, at least in my experience, you're not going to create something unless you mixed a white watercolor with maybe this color, but I'm not even sure you could get exactly that color. It's just hard. So these are like convenience colors. You know, again, this is not, the opera pink is not a color that you're going to be able to mix. So might as well just put it on the palette if you love those colors. And there's lots of colors out there that people will find that they will love. And again, you just might as well put it right in there. Okay, then what happened is April mentioned, hey, you know what? You might really like this color. And this is Naples Yellow Reddish. And I was like, you know what, April? I already know I like that color because I was introduced to this color years ago. And I just thought it's really a fun and different color to have in a palette. And it doesn't mean that every single watercolor for relaxation painting that I do is going to employ the use of this color. But if I'm doing a painting that's predominantly pink, which I love to do, like all the pinks or all the greens or all the blue greens, if I'm doing one that's predominantly pinks, it's just fun to have something that's really peachy in there that I can mix with the ochre and mix with the purple magenta and mix with the yellow and come up with interesting colors. So that's why Naples Yellow Reddish landed into my palette. And again, this is a Renaissance color, so you could get that from April at a Little Creative if you live in Canada or if you live in the United States. So she's a North American distributor, but you can get Renaissance paints from other distributors. You just have to contact Renaissance or go to their website to find out who the distributor is in your area. And I can't promise that they have a distributor in every area. So I would recommend, if you like the colors that I use or like the colors that end up in my watercolor for relaxation paintings, and you don't have access to Renaissance paints, that you absolutely can find paints in many, many, many different brands that are similar to these. They just probably won't be as economical as the Renaissance are. So black, very unusual, I think, to see black in a palette, but it turns out that black is a great neutralizer. Again, I picked up that tip from Karen Elaine, and I don't think I would ever have a palette again without it. You won't see black show up in my paintings as a pure pigment. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it should. Maybe now that we're talking about it, like I should do a painting where black is one of the colors that shows up. But it's a great neutralizer. And if you look back at what I showed you before and you look back at the paintings, I tend to mix a lot of brights with neutrals. And that's kind of part of the fun for me, is the interplay of pure color with neutralized color, and black is, like I said, it's a great neutralizer. So, okay, so now that I've got all the colors here, let's just go through them one more time, because again, I'm asked this a lot. What are the colors that I see in your palette? So it's Renaissance. Oh, sorry, I'm actually going to start from the left. So any opera pink, I happen to use the Daniel Smith, but Winsor Newton makes great opera pink, and I think probably Holbein does. Lots of great opera pinks. Okay, then Renaissance Purple Magenta, Renaissance Transparent Gold Ochre, Renaissance Transparent Yellow, Renaissance Naples Yellow Reddish, Renaissance Golden Green. Then I have my Gonzai Tombe number 50. I forgot to mention this is number 50. I'll put all of this in the notes below the video. Renaissance Helio Turquoise, Renaissance Phthalo Blue, and then I use a Renaissance Black. It might be lamp black, not sure. I will make sure to get that information for you and have it in the notes below. So, okay, So what I'm going to do now is I think I'm just going to start mixing color so you can kind of see what kind of color combinations come out of these colors in a palette. One thing you've probably noticed is that I tend to paint with a very dirty palette, and I would not typically clean my palette. But for purposes of this video, I am going to make some clean wells. Or I'm just actually going to maybe bring on another. This is a clean enough palette. I think I put acrylic ink in here for our mixed media project, thinking that I would be able to get it out of there, but it was really hard to get out of there. So I'll have to pick it all off. But anyway, it's a mostly clean palette. So I just want to show you how beautifully these colors mix up. You might be wondering why I don't clean my palette. Like I mentioned, I really like neutralized color, and I find that cleaning my palette just wastes a lot of beautiful neutralization. I don't know if that's a word, but I don't typically clean my brush very much. I just pick up water and I add whatever's in my brush to my next mix. I'm not really going to do that here because I really want to show you just some of the pure, like, secondary colors. So here we have the Renaissance Purple Magenta and the Renaissance Transparent Yellow, and it makes a very pretty orange color that is very, very similar, actually, to the Transparent Gold Ochre. So really, that's just in my palette, again, for convenience, so that when I want to grab an orange, I don't have to mix it up first. I'm just grabbing it. But that's a beautiful orange. Oranges can be, in my opinion, really ugly, and you kind of have to mix them yourself or get something that's an ochre. Because, oh man, there's some really Halloween-y looking oranges out there, which is just not my personal preference for the color orange. I mean, I might like a neon orange. All right, so anyway, so let's now try the Phthalo Blue with the transparent yellow. Going to have to use a lot of yellow and a tiny bit of blue. So whenever you're mixing color, you usually have a stronger color and a weaker color. And if you overdo it on the strong color, then you don't really get a great proportion. So I just have to pick up like a tiny bit of that blue to get a pretty green. All right, so this is the Phthalo Blue with the transparent yellow, and we'll see what kind of green we get here. There we go. Very interesting. Very similar to the golden green that's already in my palette. Very, very similar. And I really love it, which is why I was very happy that April had chosen that blue as one of the mixing colors, because I thought that is a beautiful yellow green. It is remarkably close to that. And again, added that to my palette just as a convenience, because I do a lot of painting, so having convenience things is not horrible. All right, now let's look at the alternative blue, which is the Helio Turquoise, I believe, mixed up with the transparent yellow. Again, I normally would not be cleaning off my brush. I would just dip it in the next color. Okay, I want to make sure I'm not overwhelming that with the blue. So that's a really pretty, much more springy looking green. And even though this is not my favorite version of a green, I think that together I like to have all the greens. So I want to have that See how different that is? Different blues will mix up very different greens. Okay, now let's do something that I don't normally do, which is mix up purple. Purple is not a color that I tend to use. Occasionally I will do it, but it's just not where I gravitate toward. I do think purples are beautiful, but just not what I gravitate toward. So, okay, I'm going to try the Helio Turquoise with the purple magenta to see what kind of purple that makes. Probably going to need quite a bit of the purple magenta in there. That's a very blue purple that mixed up. So not a red purple. If I was going to choose purples, I would tend probably toward more of a red purple. So let's just, for kicks and giggles, let's grab a lot of the purple magenta and a tiny bit of that mix that I already made and see what a red purple would look like. Now, I already know that I think this is beautiful. That's gorgeous. Gorgeous. That makes me really excited. But actually, what I love is the two of them together. Now let's do the same thing, but with the other blue. So I'm going to get a lot of the purple magenta. I'm actually going to put it in two wells because I know I want to see the difference between the purples. Wait, what am I doing? Okay, I'm just confusing myself at this point. All right, whatever I'm doing, let's just see what happens because I just got confused. All right, I did these with the Helio Turquoise, and now I'm going to see what the purples look like. Oh my God, I think I just totally confused myself. I did not do this with the Helio Turquoise. I did this with the Phthalo Turquoise, correct? Let's try this again. Okay, so this is the purple magenta with the Helio Turquoise. I have now created this video so that everyone who asks me, I'm going to send them a link right to this video. I'm going to say, go to YouTube, find the video. Okay, for the rest of the video, I am just going to randomly mix color and swatch, and we will see the kinds of crazy colors that are so beautiful that just start coming together in ways that are so unexpected. Like, what if I mixed the orange with the purple? What kind of color will I get then? Again, there it is. That's why I use it for convenience. Oh man, I think that's lovely. It's like a raisin color. It's more of a brownish purple. Much more interesting to me than something typical. Wow. Just love. I love the dance of the color, the water, the paper. This paper is really nice in these Etcher sketchbooks. Like really, really nice. This is definitely going to become my recommended commercially made sketchbook. So, okay, I'm going to go wild, guys. You ready? I'm going to go like completely crazy and see what happens if I mix this Kuretake number 50 blue-green with this purple that I just made. Like, this is wild and crazy color mixing just to see what happens. Nobody in their right mind would mix these two colors except possibly me. And maybe I'm not in my right mind. And I think that's a miracle right there. I think that's a miracle color. It is like a grayish, purplish, funkified, gorgeous, interesting color. Very interesting. Then I would typically not rinse out my brush, and I would just go pick up another color that's already been mixed in my palette. So now I have both this and this red purple that I mixed up over here. And then I would paint with that just to get subtle variety. And just see what comes out. I've almost never met a color that I really didn't like. Very interesting. Love it. I prefer that to either of those. This to me is much more interesting than just your typical purple mixed up between your two primary colors. That's just me. Let's do something kind of wild again. Let's not rinse out our brush and let's see what happens. I'm just going to pick up some water because I need more water in the brush. So I had this slightly neutralized purple in my brush, and I'm going to mix it into the yellow green that I had mixed up before and see what I get. And I can already tell that I love it. That to me is a wonderful, wonderful green. Very earthy, very natural, very delicious. Love it. Let's take it a step further. We've got kind of, it's a mud color. Let's see what happens if we go back to our Kuretake Gonzai number 50 and just mix it in there. What kind of interesting green am I going to get? Do I love this color? I don't know if I love it. Does it look really good juxtaposed with all these other colors? Hell yeah. All right, now my brain is telling me make it even more number 50. Now I've got a little bit of the green. So it's got the memory of that. So I'm taking my number 50 color and I'm neutralizing it a little bit to make it harmonize more with my palette. And that is really interesting and beautiful to me. So I call this the mother method, even though this is really truly like a different take on the mother method of color mixing. I don't know if you're familiar with the mother method. That is a similar related method. This is like Wendy's mother method or the Willa Wander's mother method. It's really the don't clean your brush method. This is gorgeous to me. This is gorgeous to me. All the variation of green, all the variation of purple. This, the stuff right out of the tube, not so interesting to me. Secondary colors mixed from things straight out of the tube, still not so interesting to me. Get down into this, the neutralized, muddy, complex versions. This is really, really interesting to me and fun. All right, let's do something else kind of crazy. Now, if I was doing a painting on a page or a spread in a journal, I might not do what I'm about to do. I might decide, I really like these greens. I probably would not, like I told you, I don't do the purples. So this wouldn't be really a thing so much in a real spread of mine. maybe I was working on the greens. And then if I start with the greens and I'm predominantly green, I'll stick with the blues and the yellows. I won't start usually mixing in reds and pinks and that kind of thing. Although I might try actually mixing in the Naples yellow reddish just to see, like, because it's so crazy just to see. So I'm actually, this is going to be really interesting. I don't even know if I've ever tried this one before, but I'm mixing that Naples reddish yellow. Yeah, this is just wild and lovely. It's kind of like you're painting with watercolor and gouache at the same time when you use colors like this. The Naples yellow, reddish, and this Kuretake color. This is amazing to me, like all the different greens. All right, so now that I'm like into it, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to clean off my brush. I'm going to avoid that instinct. I'm going to pick up some of my transparent yellow and just see what happens if I mix some of that transparent yellow with that wild and wacky color that I just created. I mean, you could literally just paint and using one well and just keep altering the color, but moving around the page. Yeah, love it. Love it, love it, love it. Love it. Love the paper that's in this book. This is interesting. Am I going to ditch my handmade sketchbooks for an etcher? I don't know. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That could happen. I like it that much. Okay. I want to even go more yellow. So I'm going to get more water in my brush, pick up more transparent yellow, really go in hard on the yellow, see where this goes. Love it. If I was painting a spread that I wanted to be a real finished spread, I'd be moving all around the page. I wouldn't just be going right next to the shapes I had painted. I would be moving all over the place, typically. Maybe not with every kind of design, but with a lot of the designs I do. So that's really gorgeous to me. It's getting similar to the yellow green or the golden green, but there's still a little more complexity to it. So, all right, now let's see what happens if I pick up some of the transparent gold ochre and mix it into that. And then I'm warming it up even more. Oh man, is that a gorgeous color? Okay. This is just such a sophisticated, pretty. Ooh, I think I might have some stuff on my hands that's causing the paper to resist. Always wash your hands and don't have any lotion on your hands when you touch watercolor paper. That's gorgeous to me. That's like a khaki greenish color. Beautiful. Oof. All right, where do I go next? Where do I go? Where do I go? Okay, I'm gonna do something wild, not mixing out my brush. I'm gonna pick up a tiny bit of the purple magenta in my brush because I know that if I mix red into a green, that I am just going to neutralize it and it's going to bring it closer to a brown. Right. The last thing I'm going to do before I sign off on this video is I just added some black. I'm going to even grab more. I'm being careful not to overwhelm it by adding too much, but I just want to show you how black is really cool, really good, really amazing in a palette. Let's get even more black so it really, there we go. Really shows how you don't have to be afraid of black in a watercolor palette like I was before I took Karen's course, Watercolor for Joy. So yeah, that's amazing. So basically, those are the colors in the palette. That's why I stick to a limited palette, because I find that the mixing of colors is very interesting and exciting and joyful to me, and fun and relaxing. And I go into flow state and I become one with the colors and the paper and the water and the pigment. And I just love it so much. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that it answered your questions about what every one of these colors is, why they landed here, why they stay here, and hope to see you in another YouTube video soon. Bye-bye.